Hey, everyone.
Hello. Welcome.
How's everybody doing today? It's so cold here this morning. It was like a freeze. I had to bring all the plants in last night.
Yeah. Yeah, it's we're getting used to Texas weather.
Yeah.
It's like cold,
One
really
day.
cold 1 minute and then really hot.
Yeah.
So,
oh, there we go. There we have it. So let's go ahead and get started. So welcome everyone to Beyond Barriers. Today we are going to talk about why learning is a superpower and why it is so important that you develop that muscle. So let's talk a little bit about why. Like, why is it all of a sudden such a superpower, or is it being viewed as a superpower? Because it always has been a superpower, but I don't think people have been really thinking about learning as something that is a necessity nowadays.
Yeah. Well, part of it is because of how quickly things are changing. You know, no matter what field you're in, no matter what you're an expert in, skills are getting obsolete in 18 months or less. So you could be top of your game, but if you're not staying ahead of the curve or staying up with all the trends, it doesn't matter what you know, it's going to get out of obsolete pretty quickly. And so that requires this constant learning, but, it's impossible to know everything. Like no matter what you look at, there's new technologies, there's new kind of ways of doing work. In fact, in the next 3 to 4 years, 50% of employees worldwide are going to have to basically get reskilled. That's a significant number. Right? So essentially, it's almost like everyone has to redo everything. And when I think about back in my parents' or grandparents' generation, it's like you went to school, you learned a skill, you start working, and that was it.
Yeah. And, it's this idea, there's always been the continuing education or the continued learning. But in the past, you didn't necessarily have to go back so often. And I think, like you were saying, the age of digital disruption and everything is changing. You may learn how to do something one way and it's automated. And then next thing you know, there's a new version or a new update and you've got to learn new ways.
Yeah. But there's also a dependency on your employer or your company telling you what you need to learn. So, if there's a new update or some kind of new rollout, you're trained by the company. Well, that's just not enough anymore because essentially what's happening is even companies can't keep up with all of the learning and development needs that are coming up so fast. So it really is up to you to stay up with everything. And so the first thing that happens is recognizing that it's impossible to know it all.
Yes.
But it is possible to, even if you can't know everything, it is possible to learn anything at all.
Right. And the most important thing about learning, and I think one of the things that lots of research, even, educational institutions and others have realized that, education has been around for centuries, right? Higher ed, whatnot. And it was always about what you needed to learn, but they did a very poor job of teaching you how to learn. So they would put all of this content in front of you. And a lot of the times it was just memorization. You would regurgitate, take these tests. But research now shows that the average human within 48 hours loses 80% of what they've learned 48 hours prior to. Right. So the true, application is what really causes someone to learn and retain it and just lasting learning, which actually is beneficial in the sense of if you're learning the just-in-time learning and you're learning because you're having to upskill quickly, you're actually applying it. And so you are going to retain it.
Right.
But the other most important thing is that you've got to learn how to learn smarter. And that is where you've got to do a little bit of self-assessment and understand how you best learn. And so now institutions of education are looking at what are the learning styles? How do people learn? And there are several different learning styles. And there's 7 main ones that they talk about, but I would say the most popular ones are, are you, a visual learner? Are you a kinesthetic learner? Are you like an auditory learner? And there are certain things that you learn differently. So I personally know when it comes to reading books, I'm a slow reader. In order for me to because I want to understand and retain. But if I listen to a book, like an audiobook, I can get through books right away.
And I'm the opposite.
You're total opposite. So you have to learn.
I can listen to things. So,
Yes.
it's impossible for me to use audiobooks, but I read really, really fast. So I can go through 1 to 2 books a week. But if I had to listen to even a podcast, it would take me 7 days to get through it.
Yeah.
So you just have to know your style that works best.
And you learn your systems, because I'll listen to a book first and then I'll pick up the hard copy book, and then I can read really quickly or open it up and then immediately recall what I heard and look at it and then retain it better and then apply it.
Yeah.
So you've got to learn those things of how do you learn best, and then figuring out how do you best do it. And, some people also social learners, they learn best in groups. I would peg you sometimes as you're more of an interpersonal learner. You like to learn on your own, and then you like to bring it into a group setting and things like that. So the most important thing is learning how you learn best so that you can learn smarter and quicker and be able to apply it in this whole idea now of just-in-time learning, opposed to you're going to go to school for 4 years before you apply anything.
That's right. Yeah. And, recognizing that it's actually up to you to stay current, because if you don't, you're going to get left behind. I mean, the world's just moving way too fast. And so if you say, well, the last time I learned was in college and now I don't need to learn anymore, really think about how much time every week are you investing in learning. Look at your calendar, and that should give you an indication of not just casually like browsing through social media or Googling something, but actually dedicating time to learning. If you don't have time accounted for that on your calendar, chances are you're not doing it systematically or as something that is an important part of what is required to be successful in the digital age, right?
Yeah. And, there are definitely different things of learning techniques and strategies and habits for you to learn and retain that. And, you have some really good ones of like writing things down or your think time. And so what are some of those?
One of the things that I've done for a very long time was like, really thinking about one particular skill or topic I'd focus on every year. So for years, I've done that where I put one thing. So it could be a language, for example, just say, I'm going to learn this language, in this particular year. So 12 months, I'm going to focus on that. Or it could be a core skill or some topic that is like artificial intelligence. I'm going to focus a whole year really diving deep into that, right? But more recently, I changed that. And instead of making it one topic or one skill for the whole year, I made it one focus per month. So, which was kind of an experiment. I had no idea what would happen, but it just felt like with things changing so fast that even a whole year, yes, it allows me to deep dive, but kind of having a breadth of perspective, because there's so much interconnectedness in what we do, right? There's different topics that connect to each other. And if you're sort of doing it in shorter cycles, you learn differently. So the things that I got out of this experiment of one skill per month or one topic per month was that it forced me to break down really big problems into something smaller. So instead of saying, I'm going to learn everything there is to learn about artificial intelligence, it could be like, I'm going to figure out what part of that am I most interested in or most valuable or relevant for me, and I'm going to focus on just that. So it forced me to pick something that was more valuable instead of a linear sort of progression of that, and just sort of get more knowledgeable about that area. Second, breaking it down that way also allowed me to, incorporate new learning. So 30 days go by, I focus on a topic, and maybe I discover new insights or new sources of information. So it's almost like doing it in the sprint-based style allowed me to pivot and, incorporate new insights a lot faster. And a third thing that happened is that there was a compounding effect, because as each of these monthly sprints went by, I was sort of drawing connections between different topics, and really forced me to reflect and think about how does this all connect? Kind of almost like zooming out and saying, how does, all these different things I'm learning about every month, how do they all connect to each other? What does that actually mean? So it almost gives you this predictability, like you start to think big picture as a result of that. So I found that, really interesting. And certainly if you want to go deep into a subject, then you have to give it more time. But this was a whole different way of learning that also taught me how to learn faster and learn better, and actually think, not just consume.
Yeah. And I think, for me, I'm very much a auditory learner, but also a kinesthetic learner. I feel like I have to do
Yeah.
in order to learn better. And so I learned the best way for me sometimes to learn is to teach, because I'm doing it, or I, will learn it well enough so I can teach it, and then I retain it much better, opposed to just learning it in theory and never applying it.
Yeah.
So application for me, I found to be kind of like my superpower in learning faster. And retaining it more. And, then once I heard that statistic of 48 hours, you're going to forget it. And I'm like, no, I'm going to. So in 48 hours, I'm going to ask myself questions to like make sure that I've retained it. But I think that's a really powerful way of learning as well.
Yeah. So there you have it. Now you know why learning is important, and figure out your style of how you learn best. Figure out how to make learning a habit, and put some of these ideas into practice so you can make learning your superpower. All right. And with that, we will see you next time.